Again, good afternoon from my side. My name is Katharina Schilling. I'm the head of the IWD Secretariat, and I will now guide you through the first two slides that I have prepared for you. The first one is the housekeeping. It's just to let you know that this session will be recorded and made available on demand. In addition, you should know that after this webinar, we will provide you all the information. So the presentation will be available on our website. You can also watch the recording, and you can see the summary of the webinar. In addition, please be aware that you can use the chat box on the one hand, but just for introducing yourself, for example. In addition, you have the Q&A box. This is the one to ask questions. We will monitor the Q&A box to put your questions forward. Please note, your microphones are muted and we cannot connect you basically to the webinar itself. So we cannot respond to raised hands. Good. So we have a very nice panel today and prepared for this webinar. With us are Sarah Keener from the World Bank. She's not only our moderator, but she will also provide the intro presentation. In addition, we have Louise McSorley from Scottish Water, Fiola Lascu from Kosovo, head of the wastewater treatment plant Jakova, and finally, Florian Kretschmer from the University of Natural Resources and Life Sciences in Austria. Having said that, I will stop my presentation and I will hand over to you, Sarah. Thank you.
Good afternoon or good morning here. Good afternoon to everyone. Very glad to be in this seminar. I think you can see my slides now, and I was going to start us out by talking about what is the secret sauce and how to attract and retain the talent you need in water. Let's see if I can make this. Can you see my screen? Great. So the first sort of question is, why do we need a secret sauce? And the short answer is because the data shows that we need it in terms of attracting women to water utilities and water institutions. So data clearly shows that the more gender equity you have between men and women in terms of staffing, the higher, better performance you have on management practices, and management practices correlate very highly with objective performance indicators. So improvements in terms of non-revenue water, other types of objective improvements. So the first reason is this is important for your own performance. But attracting women is important, but attracting youth and young women is actually also extremely important in this context. And with the need for new technologies such as AI, innovations needed for circular economy, and the demands of adjusting to the challenges of climate change and water, we need to attract a younger workforce. But there are some challenges. So in particular, in the Danube countries, you have declining populations, which means that a large percentage of the workforce is going to be retiring in the next 5 to 10 years. But you also have this exacerbated by net out-migration, which varies a lot from country to country. But for example, the Western Balkans are expected to lose about 1 million youth in the next decade. And so these are some of the challenges which are why we need a secret sauce to really figure out how to attract and retain the talent. Here at the World Bank, we have focused on largely gender diversity, but also youth diversity in water institutions through our platform, which you might be familiar with, called Equal Aqua. Equal Aqua is guided by 3 interlinked pillars. First, we have the platform, which is a partnership that allows us to pool resources among different organizations, go much faster, pool capacity building. So we're interested in how to get more gender diverse utilities. The second major pillar is on building evidence and benchmarking. You don't know how you're doing if you actually don't quantify it. So we now have the largest global database on not just gender diversity and staffing, but other policies within water utilities. that help to promote a gender diverse workforce or diverse workforce. And then the third pillar, which is operational support. So if you know what your issue is, you have the knowledge, you have to put it to use. And so we do this through many of our operations. We have about 60 World Bank projects that benefit from this. But the technical assistance in terms of how to make these changes is actually quite important. I'd encourage any utilities or other water institutions that are connected that maybe have not done the benchmarking to please join and do the benchmarking. I know that Danube Water, through its benchmarking, is integrating the gender component. We have under Equal Aqua, and Danube Water is one of the key partners that we have. So the more we build this database, the more robust our ability to get scorecards and understand our own performance and progress through time. So for those of you who haven't seen this data, there is a gender gap globally on women in the water workforce. Only about 1 in 5 employees in water institutions are women, with only about 1 in 4, a little under 1 in 4 being managers. We know that this varies a lot by region, and in the ECA region, or Eastern and Central European region, we have a very small, if you notice this data's got a very small sample size. That is going to be changing, I think, very soon with the Danube Water integration of gender into their benchmarking. But regardless, there are gaps in every single region. So this is consistent. And those gaps are not only for water utilities, they're also for water institutions. And with climate change, the challenges are both moving upstream in terms of better management of water resources, quality of water resources, and downstream as well in terms of flooding. But yet there is no systematic data on the role of women or youth in the organizations making these decisions. Where we have data, for example, in Albania, they've done some comprehensive analysis for the entire water sector. They find that there is a gap, and in some cases, even when they have something like a quota to make sure that women are represented in some of the basin organizations, is not always met. So the trends, unfortunately, are fairly consistent, even if the exact levels might vary. So how do we address this? What is the sort of different steps in our recipe? And there's 5 sort of key steps that we focus on. The first one is diagnosis, and that's important, where you can get a scorecard, you do an HR survey, you can provide information and get information on a database. And that's important. Why? Because part of addressing this issue is getting internal support that there is an issue in the first place and understanding exactly what's driving it. So that's the important first step. The second is to look at attraction. Are you attracting young people? Are you attracting women? And there's obviously a large role to play in terms of gender norms, whether young women see themselves in as a sanitary engineer, division of labor. There's availability of STEM graduates, and the availability of role models to inspire people to actually apply to the sector. Second step is, once you get people applying, what is your process for recruitment? Is the school to work transition one that's easy, or are there obstacles in the way? Are your advertisements inspiring both the young people and the women? And then what's your hiring process? Are there certain biases? Do you have hiring panels that are made up of only men, or only very senior people who might not see the value in some of the skills brought by younger people? The third step, retention, extremely important, particularly for women. Once you get women in, and even for young people, they come into organization, but there's no way for them to be listened to or to contribute. They often will get disillusioned and leave. So work-life balance, family-friendly policies, freedom from sexual harassment, fair wages are all important. And then lastly, advancement. So, are there training and mentorship opportunities? Are there opportunities for leadership? How does that work? So we basically go through these different 5 steps in the recipe to understand what can be improved and what's really driving that diversity. For each of the challenges, there are, both challenges, but also opportunities. So I won't go through all of these, but just some of the examples for attraction, doing career talks, bring your daughter to work day, scholarships for STEMs, and other outreach campaigns. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we talk about youth. For recruitment, having female engineers go directly to universities, inclusive job advertisements. And for retention, one of the things that you often hear is that, well, we can't compete on salaries and wages, right? That they're much higher, for example, in the energy sector, which is competing for some of the same graduates. But you can compete actually on things like the flexibility of the work-life balance, maternity and paternity leave, a lot of the policies that make it a good environment and an inspiring environment for people to stay. So there's actually quite a lot that can be done there, and advancement, many different things that can be done. So, one of the questions is sort of, where are we in the Danube? And context matters. I think the message, the one message that comes out to me is that attraction is particularly important. Because if you look at, this is just one set of the countries, if you look at the number of women in STEM fields, you have only 16% in the Czech Republic of those in STEM fields, or graduating from STEM fields, are women. If you broaden your vision or your horizon, you have countries like Kosovo, where you only have 16%. And a country like Kosovo, gender norms are extremely strong. It's got one of the lowest rates of female labor force participation in the region, and actually in the world. So, when you focus on attraction, focusing on those gender norms, focusing on how you shift women and young people's own aspirations and vision of themselves in this field is going to be extremely important, because you're competing for a very narrow slice of the pie. So one of the things that we did during the UN Water Conference in March was we partnered with IWA, and they had youth young professionals program, and they had a whole session just on how to increase the voice of young people in the water sector. And one of the things that one of their quotes which really stuck out to me was, how many children are dreaming of a career in the water sector? How many, you hear people dream of being an astronaut, dream of being, president. How many people are dreaming of the water sector? And I think that this issue of attraction, given the competition within the region, and particularly in certain countries, is going to be extremely important. And I think we need to think outside the box. So when we talk about, water has a great story. Water is life. You can survive without energy, you can survive without housing, but you actually can't survive without water. And when you start to look at some of the work that's being done more recently on things like groundwater, where if you don't have, if you've depleted your groundwater, if you've contaminated your groundwater, that's the future. That's the, that's the sort of future of that specific place, because it's going to be very difficult to survive there, or to have value there. So, there is an incredible story to tell in water, particularly with water and climate. And I think we need to tell it. And, some things that can be done are, for example, advertising together with other water organizations to inspire people about why this is so important right now, and what creative jobs are in this sector. We can also start young, even thinking about partnerships and interactive curriculum in schools or citizen science. How do we, get those kids to dream of water? We can articulate water journeys in terms of pathways, that this is not just about being an engineer. There's research, there's water diplomacy, there's machine learning, there is engineering, but there's also business development. And we can also partner with, or leverage partnerships. So you have the Danube Water Partnership here. There's a number of other organizations that are very active in networks to promote youth. And if you are recruiting or trying to attract, think about reaching out to them proactively. And last, in terms of attraction, this is one of these are all suggestions from this group of young professionals, is to evaluate the effectiveness of outreach. So we often will do outreach, but we don't take it seriously enough to really assess, okay, after we did that outreach to that high school or that university, how many people changed their minds, decided to come to the sector. So these are some of the ideas that came out of this engagement with young professionals during UN Water. But now we turn to the other steps in the recipe, the recruitment, retention, and advancement. One question is, where are we in the Danube water institutions? And we actually don't have much data on this. We have data on gender, but we don't have as much data on youth in terms of these things. In terms of gender, and again, this database is going to be getting much larger for the ECHA region. There are, however, even in that small sample, a lot of things that could be done that don't have to do, that don't do with wages, but for example, policies to prevent sexual harassment. Less than half of the water utilities actually had them in the ECHA region. Mentorship programs, only about a third had them. And flexible working arrangements, only about 20% had them. So again, if you cannot, if you're competing for this very narrow slice, these are some things that you can actually control, which are worth really focusing on, both in terms of retaining talent, but also even attracting them, and particularly attracting young people who are really going to expect more flexible work environment. So as I mentioned, the data on youth in the water workforce is very scant. This is just the youth labor force in one segment of water supply and sanitation. It varies a lot by country, but it's not very high, so there's a lot of work to do. There are, one of the things that we'll also, I think, talk about a little bit more, but there's many initiatives within the Danube region on addressing brain drain and youth migration and youth policy forums. There's many things that are going on. I think the next step, or a key thing to focus on next, is how do you use this type of a framework, a systematic framework, to really better track whether efforts to attract, recruit, and promote young workers are working. How do you share that information among different partners so that you can learn much faster, as in this type of seminar? And how do you benchmark and do diagnostics on this? And then how to integrate lessons from youth organizations. One of the other suggestions that they had was, when you talk about scaling up mentorships, think about reverse mentorships. So you're getting young talent. When you do get into your organization, how are you creating the opportunity for that talent to actually be heard and be used? And finally, efforts at attraction, I think, are going to be particularly important in this region. Thank you very much. And with this, I would like to turn over to Ms. Fiola Lascu, who is going to share her perspective with us.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you very much for your presentation. It was really a good overview of the real situation in Kosovo and also in the region. It was which was expressed by real statistics and real numbers, and it was and you touched on very important topics like involvement of women in the water sector. I would like to first start with a message for young water professionals in the general, and to share a bit from my own experience through these years as a young professional, and to share why I approach the water sector and why I chose to work for the water sector. I would like to share a little bit from my background in order to see the chronology why I was choosing to work also in the water utility. And my background is I started with a chemical engineering bachelor, and then I finished my master for environmental protection engineering. But still, I didn't know if I have to choose the water sector or not. But during my master, I got a scholarship, and I was lucky to study in the Netherlands for a semester. And when I went for environmental sciences, water technology, and then I got the first impression, and I was very obsessed with what they are doing in the water sector and with their development. And knowing the situation in Kosovo with water, I said that definitely I will go into to work with in the water sector. And later on, for 2 years, I was working as a wastewater engineer for a Dutch company. And in parallel, I was following a young expert program training as a young water expert, which the aim of this program was to develop personal and professional development. So it was in general my first experiences and my first approach in the water sector. And after that, knowing that regional water companies in Kosovo, and specifically regional water company of Jakova, Jakova is my city, my town, and knowing that the regional water company of Jakova has a good prestige and also provides a stability at work, and also it's a good institution, it's a right institution to promote yourself as a professional. I decided to apply as a process engineer at the wastewater treatment plant of Jakova city. A wastewater treatment plant. This wastewater treatment plant is one of the first 3 WWTPs in Kosovo, in the whole Kosovo. So it was quite a big step for me. And later on, regional water company of Jakova considered my background and considered my former experiences, and then they also considered my performance, and they decided to give me the authority to manage the whole unit of the wastewater treatment plant of Jakova. So it was my growth went step by step. What I wanted to say with this, what is the message on this, that we have to invest before being a manager. We have to first invest in ourselves. We need a lot of experiences, different experiences, but what is most important is to find the way to study abroad, to study in different countries, and also to work with internationals is a key factor if you want to have a success in your career. The second thing is that yes, regional water company give me the authority to manage this unit, but they give me the full support. They are still doing that, but it's not enough. It's up to you how you will use this authority, how you will build your own authority, and how you will build your own leadership. And it's also important to create trust in your team and also in your institution, or in your in this case in utility. Now I would like to talk also as per gender issue. Being a manager of wastewater treatment plant and being female, it's not easy at all, because we all know that technical department, the majority of employers are mostly men, and being a young woman, a manager of a WTP wasn't easy at all for me at the beginning. I remember myself, I was struggling a lot. I have a lot of difficulties because I was involved in the project since the beginning, from testing period, warranty period. So we had to organize a lot of meetings. We had to a lot of meeting with different contractors, different subcontractors, different consultancies, companies. And I remember myself being in the meeting room, the only woman there, and what was the most interesting, at the head of the table as a manager. And it was a very awkward situation for me, because at the beginning they were looking at me and you could see clearly in their face that what she's doing here, and she doesn't belong here. And I heard a lot of comments. I found myself in a very awkward situation and very stressful situation. But I persist. I was persistent and I didn't give up. But still, it was very, very difficult being a female in technical department. And I remember a day I went at home. Very tired. It was a very tough day for me, and I said to my father that I definitely will resign, and I'm not good at this. I think these kind of jobs are only for men. And my father said, give him up. It's not solution, and you have to continue. You're just doing great. You have to work hard with commitment. Every day you must learn new things, and just do your best. Just do your best. Just do your best, and it will help you in long term. And it really helped me because I had someone who support me. What I want to say with this, that we also need motivation, not just from family members, but also from friends, from colleagues, from senior managers, whatever. But we, especially women in the sector, they need motivation to push them forward. Also what works for me, and what I also suggest to the other young professionals, especially young women, that they need to follow the figures, the examples, and they need to have role models. Me personally, I'm obsessed by following the successful women around the world, but also in Kosovo. For example, our president, she's a woman, and I when I was struggling, I said, yeah, she's a president. She did it. She can do it. I also can do it. So we need more examples, not in general, but especially in water sector. We need more examples. We need role models for young professionals, and especially for young women. I also feel kind of responsible for that. I don't want to give up. I'm so persistent because I'm not only responsible for myself, but I'm also responsible to be a good figure, a good example for young women. And last but not least, it's very in order to attract young professionals, it's also important to give them, as you also mentioned in your presentation, Sarah, it's important to give them a chance to attend different conferences, to follow different trainings, to expand their knowledge, also to expand their local and international network, and to not only to develop them professionally, but also to build the confidence. So this is a bit from my own perspective and from my own experience until now as a manager of the WWTP, of course, of Jakova. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Viola. It's just an amazing story to hear how you've become the role model for this, and what you had to go through, and how you were encouraged by your family to do that. It's really wonderful story, and makes it very tangible and real. I want to pass over now to Louise McSorley from Scottish Water. Louise, over to you, and I think you have a presentation.
No, I'm not sure that can everyone see that okay?
Yeah, we can.
I'm going to struggle to be quite as exciting and motivating as Fiola. I think we've got a future water industry role model, international role model there, it really makes me feel emotional to hear what you're saying, Fiola, because I think I look back at so I've worked in the water industry for, don't know, about 26 years, something like that. And certainly when I entered it, some of the experiences that you had were similar. I mean, I've always worked in the sort of HR training area, but I would often be in meetings just as you have been, but not as a leader, of where, you know, you're the only woman, and you get used to that. But I think what I'm seeing at Scottish Water is a real change in that. And what I want to do today is really just to talk a bit about what our experience at Scottish Water has been, and sort of take on board some of the ideas that Sarah had in her initial presentation in terms of what we've actually done. So what have we put in place, and thinking about some of the challenges that Fiola has had. So what resonates with our experience, and what are we doing, and what's our lessons learned. So in terms of my role, I work in strategic resourcing and skills. So I not only look at the resourcing issues that we have, but also about the skills that we require for the future, and to make sure that our organisation and our people are responsive and agile going forward. So we've done some research into our own research into what the challenges that we're experiencing at the moment. They're very, very similar to what Sarah was discussing, and some of those demographic impacts that she was talking about, but also just the global issues in terms of recruitment and retention. So making sure that we're getting new entrants into the sector, achieving reasonable levels of attrition. One of the things that we really want to work on is attracting candidates from other sectors. So it was interesting what Sarah was saying about in the past, certainly we would lose people to other utilities. So so whether that's power or but also oil and gas as well. And what we want to do is to have really fast ways of giving people relevant water experience so that they can use their aligned skills, and really trying to attract a diversity of people. So I'm going to talk in a little bit. So these are some of the challenges. I'm going to talk in a couple of slides just about what we're doing about some of these. We also have quite a lot of regional pressures within Scotland. So we cover the whole of Scotland. We're a public sector organisation, and whereas in England they're private water companies. So we're slightly different in Scotland. And we have, so if you can look behind me, you can see one of our reservoirs. We've got a lot of rural areas. So we have a swathe in the middle of the country where we have high urban density, but most of Scotland is quite low density. But we've got to provide water and wastewater services throughout those rural areas. Some of what Sarah was saying about creating a culture of flexibility. We've always had a great culture of flexibility in Scottish Water. I think with COVID, actually finding a lot of organisations after COVID providing more flexibility in the ways that they work. So there's some of the things that we were really good at, and now lots of organisations are good at them. So we have to create even more flexibility, and we have to create even more attractive propositions. One of the things, so it's great to have Florian on the call coming next, is how do we engage more with further and higher education? We already do a lot of work with school children and looking at the water industry, and I'm going to share some work that we've been doing on that. But it's how do we make sure that the courses at university are really reflecting the water industry, and then encouraging graduates to apply to us and to think about the excitement of working in the water industry. So I might be asking Fiona to give me a video to help us talk about female engineers who are international. The other thing that we're doing, and it's probably not something that either of the other speakers have talked about, is looking at innovative solutions which address some of these skills challenges. So you'll see there's a little picture here of it's like a DFMA. So how can we use industrialized methods to create our new water treatment operations of the future? How do we embed remote access and remote working so that we can, and we have the proper instrumentation to do that, which will actually address some of those skills challenges. And that is especially useful in the rural areas that we have, which sometimes can be difficult to access, especially in bad weather. And obviously we've got the impacts of net zero and our digital challenges for the future as well. So combining those to think about what are our solutions. So this has got lots of solutions on it, and I'm going to show you a few pictures in a minute. So one of the things that we've been doing is, which really relates to what Sarah was talking about, is how do we change our approach to attraction to really widen people applying. So you're going to see some of the imagery on some of my slides that we use internally and externally for our application. So using a much greater variety of imagery, and we also use a lot of people stories. So I'm going to in a second. In fact, I'll do it just now. In the chat, I'm just going to put a link of our careers map. So really trying to use videos of people actually working in Scottish Water, talking about their jobs. We found that really, really helpful. We've then got some skills areas on the left. So analysis and business insight skills is probably a global skill that we need to develop across not just in Scotland, but across the globe. So what we're doing is we've done an I Love Data campaign. I'm going to show you that in a second. And we're also looking at programs to support people internally enrolled to develop these skills, as well as reskilling internal people. So not just looking at graduates and modern apprenticeships externally, but also having trainee schemes for internal people to start developing the skills that we need for the future. We're doing that with engineers and engineering project managers. So we have specialist graduate schemes, and we again are going to look at trainee technical specialist trainee programs for internal people for those. In terms of leadership skills, we've seen quite a big improvement in especially our gender mix for leaders over the years, which has been brilliant. And we've now got a big programme, over 350 people in Scottish Water who are aspiring leaders. We are giving them a development programme to really assist them, and we're finding we're getting a lot more diverse people applying for that and going through that programme, as well as having just general leadership development. We have a lot of work in youth pipelines. So the careers map that I've just posted up, this is brilliant for youth outreach. So we have that available obviously on the internet, but we also go out to schools and universities and colleges, and we use our STEM ambassadors. So we have a lot of people internally who are willing to talk about STEM subjects and go out and do that at conferences and at community events and things like that. And then a very broad range of youth pipelines, really trying to address that demographic challenge that you guys have got, and the same for us. We're also investing in continuous improvement skills, and then specialist skills like MICA skills, so mechanical, electrical, instrumentation, and automation skills. It's really growing in the water industry, and we need to develop those skills more. So I don't have a huge amount of time today to talk about much more. So I've got a couple of slides just with the images. If people would like to get in touch, I will. I'm on LinkedIn, so please try and connect with me through that if you do want to know more about some of the work. So this is the careers map. It's a really, really attractive visual map. So this is just an example. So you click on water supply and treatment, and you will then see a range of information about the roles in that area of the business, and then lots of lovely videos of people who work for us and their experiences at Scottish Water. And we're using that a lot for really trying to spread the word about working in the water industry. The other things that we do is we're, as I said, that we're part of a STEM ambassador hub. So we do a lot of work with STEM, and we also have some specific information. So this Generation H2O for schools. So we go into schools, and we have a huge range of resources that we use both at primary schools and secondary schools to really start them thinking about the water industry and the water cycle at an early stage. And then on the right hand side here, you can see this I Love Data campaign. So again, this is just about us using visual imagery to try and attract people in. So all of these people work in lots of different roles in Scottish Water, they use data, and the hearts, they've got why they love data and how they're using data. And we found we use this externally and internally, and we got such a bigger range of people applying to our roles because it just felt more attractive and a bit different. And the last thing I just wanted to mention is that we've invested hugely in diversity and inclusion groups within Scottish Water. So these are all our belong groups, and these have really helped us to increase diversity in the organisation, but also support those who have got protected characteristics in our organisation. And it's been a really effective way. And we're starting to use these actually with our suppliers as well and partners so that they can get involved in that too. And that was me. Thank you very much. I think I'm just going to pass on to Florian or Sarah, unless you wanted to come in if there's any questions or anything. Thank you.
No, I think that was just phenomenal. Over to Florian.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. So thank you very much for your contributions. They helped me a lot to frame my feedback, actually. I took some buzzwords with me. So Viola was talking about motivation, which I think fits well to my contribution. Sarah was talking about thinking outside the box, and Luis also mentioned other sectors, and Luis further mentioned the collaboration or engagement of, let's say, no collaboration between the practice and education. And I think these three aspects I can enlighten it a little bit more from my, let's say, more academic perspective. So I'm from a university. My university, the English name is University of Natural Resources and Life Sciences. So our students can study in the field of bioresource management, environmental science, civil engineering. So basically they are already quite aware about sustainability, about environmental protection. So they are motivated to work in this field. So when thinking of water, they are aware of climate change. When we have discussions, they know about draft events. We focus in the context of climate change. They are aware of pluvial flooding. So water is there somehow. But when thinking of let's say, sanitary engineering or water supply, I often observe, not only in the discussion with my students, but also with the public, that infrastructure is there, but it's underground. And the people know, okay, we have the tap water. I turn on the tap. There should be high quality water in my household. And when I go to the toilets, I will flush the button, and that's it. So it's underground, and it's somehow, out of mind of people, although they are aware that water is important, especially in the context of climate change. But when I deal with my students, they now know, okay, we have flooding issues. That's the one thing. In the cities, we want to make our cities green. So we have to fight urban heat island effects and things like that. So they are very aware of the green. And then when we discuss and say, okay, if you want the green needs the blue, otherwise this will not work. And then the discussion starts, because what I observe is that the mindset is still sometimes, or not sometimes, maybe even in the majority of students, has this, let's say, more gray approach of infrastructure. So we have piped networks, and we can find perfectly technical solutions for everything. But now we see a shift somehow towards, let's say, more nature-based approaches. We not only gray, but also blue-green, what we would say. And this brings me somehow to the point, thinking of other sectors or thinking out of the box. So it's not only gray infrastructure in sanitary engineering. When we deal with wastewater, it's not only waste, it's actually a resource. A resource for different aspects, actually. I think it's quite obvious. Treated wastewater can be a resource for water reuse. So in Mediterranean areas, the use of treated wastewater for irrigation is an issue. Also the use of treated wastewater for cleaning streets or the like. So we have to think of different types of water. So we have waters of different types of quality, and we should think, okay, what type of water should be used for what purpose? So this is not only sanitary engineering and discharging the wastewater, but it's moving somehow from end of pipe to beginning of pipe. So it's not, the treatment plant is not the end point, but it's actually a starting point. For instance, for water to be reused. Apart from the water, it's also about energy. So wastewater contains a lot of thermal energy. We take hot showers, we have the washing machines, the dishwashers. We produce a lot of hot water. And up to now, this thermal energy has not been used widely. But European Commission states that the heating and cooling sector is the biggest sector of Europe. And this is still strongly dominated by fossil fuels. So, okay, wastewater can be a source for energy as well. Then we talk about in the sector on sewage sludge and phosphorus removal and things like that. So wastewater can also be a source for nutrients or for other substances. So it's not only about nitrogen or phosphorus, it can also be the carbon for the plastic industries, for instance. Now this carbon comes from fossils, but it might also be extracted from wastewater. So we have wastewater as a resource for water again, for energy, and for nutrients or other substances. And in addition, after 3 years of pandemic, we also know wastewater can be a very good, suitable source for data, so for epidemiology. So in my point of view, we need a paradigm change. In IWA, this started already a little bit. We are not talking about wastewater treatment plants anymore, but of water resource recovery facilities. And this, of course, has a very different image. So not end of pipe waste, but beginning of pipe resource. And we should not only talk in the sector about this issue, but we should also talk to other sectors, because when talking of wastewater as a resource, we immediately have direct contact to other sectors. So for the irrigation, it's the agriculture. For energy, it's the energy sector. For the epidemiology, it's public health and so on. So the connections are there. They just should be made. And this is something, yeah, we should discuss in the sector, and how we can reach out to let's say other professional fields as well, because this then also helps to attract talents, students from other disciplines, not only from, let's say, hardcore sanitary engineering, but you see the example of Viola. She's also actually not a sanitary engineer, and I think this is a good role model. So this is for the second point, so for thinking outside the box. And then for the third thing, how to strengthen the collaboration between practice or the public and universities. So what are we doing as universities at the moment to, let's say, bring science into practice? Basically, at my university in Austria, we talk about the third mission of universities. So it's not only the first mission, which is about research, the second about teaching of our students, but the third mission is also about bringing our scientific knowledge into practice and into public. So this is the third mission, and this starts for us by bringing kids to universities. We have kids universities in summer, so it's for elementary school kids. My daughter is 8 now, and she's there. She loves it. So they just get into touch with different fields, the scientific fields at my university, and this is where things get started. Then we build on those experiences. We invite students from high schools for excursions, for some teaching at the universities, also to raise their awareness and to raise their interests. And then finally, we go to, let's say, our core teaching to our students. But this is not only our theoretic stuff, but what we like to do is that it's practice orientated. We work together a lot with water utilities, wastewater utilities. They come to us with some up-to-date questions, and we can use their contacts for master thesis, for having, let's say, on-site studies and so on. So we have a good collaboration with the utilities, and we bring the demands and the knowledge they have into our teaching. So it's not taught by the professors though, but by practitioners. And the students really enjoy that, because then it's also for their motivation again. They see the purpose why they are learning. And of course, they have the motivation to protect the environment and so on. But when the practice tells them what their, let's say, knowledge could be used for, then we see that this is an additional booster for their motivation. And we do not only focus, let's say, on the education on national level, but we focus also on international cooperations. Viola also mentioned that collaboration on international level is important. We deal a lot with different things in the field of wastewater as a resource. We have now cooperations with University in Pristina in Kosovo on this issue, with Agricultural University in Tirana in Albania on this issue, just to get things started in Western Balkans as well. And on Monday, 2 PhD students from Albania came to my university, and they elaborate their PhD here. And our thing is, or our idea is, that we want to teach the future teachers. So they have no need to go abroad, because they can be taught by their own people, having let's say the standards we have in Austria, in Central Europe, or wherever. So that it's just about mobilities, for, let's say, temporal mobilities, but not for moving abroad on long term. I think that's what I had. Also, to summarize somehow all the discussions we had before. Thank you for the attention.
Fantastic, Florian. And you know, I think the way you've reframed this in terms of thinking outside the box is just brilliant. And I have to say, one of our groundwater engineers showed me a model. I'm not an engineer by training, but they showed me an interactive model that they use, and it opened my eyes to really understanding how important this was, how central it was, how it worked, and how everybody should actually understand this. When you think about things like the rotation of our globe has actually been shifted from groundwater extraction, all of a sudden people realize this is what we need to be focusing on. And also your point on teaching the future teachers in terms of how do you address that brain drain, and how do you once you train people, make sure that they stay in their country. So fantastic set of examples. And also for Louise, the very concrete examples that you brought out were just fascinating. I'd encourage everyone actually to follow and look at the interactive career mapping, because it's just a fantastic resource. So I think we are now entered into the discussion part of the session. So please put your questions in the chat, and we can go ahead and address them. I see that there is one, I think, very comment from Leonat Muscolari. I'm not sure it's a question, but it's more of a comment. They want to highlight some significant issues for talent acquisition, political influence-driven staff turnover, salaries that are not great, and a decline in young people considering water engineering professionals, and gender inequities. They would ask us to consider water utilities workers' employment status, change to protect from political instability. That's we didn't talk about that very much, but clearly that can be something that really affects the aspirations, the inspiration, the motivation of staff. So I think it's a very good point. Reducing engineering and environmental compensation gaps to attract and retain talent. That might be subject to more macro constraints. And the third thing that Leonat recommended was subsidized university programs or scholarships for water professionals to foster interest and expertise. I think, maybe one of the things we can do is open also this up to our own panel to see if you have any additional comments and reflections on what you heard from others, or if you want to reflect back on anything. And then we'll see if we have other questions coming in.
Sarah, I'm quite happy to respond to Leonat, and also there's a question from Antonia about internships. So
yes,
I'm not very sure about the. I'm sorry, I'm not very sure about the political instability employment status piece. Certainly at Scottish Water, we invest heavily in permanent contracts. We do use some fixed term contracts, but one of the big things that attracts people to us is that we do provide long-term stability as much as we can for people, and we have very high retention rates. And just to give you an example, we have people that have been at Scottish Water for 10 years, but they're still perceived as new.
wow.
So because we have people who spend like 40 years with us, I think it is really important, because especially in our industry, when it is very long term, you know, we build assets that are going to be there for the long term, and we support our communities for the long term. Like and I think we're original, all of us, because we all are consumers of our own products. So it's important to us, like we're part of the community of people that we support, and that's one of the things at Scottish Water that we emphasise. In terms of the compensation gaps, I think, Sarah, you talked a bit about that. You know, there's often constraints. I think we are in a market, and it's interesting. We're re-looking at our pay at the moment, and certainly there's been some drift. We tend to emphasize the other parts of our packages as much as pay, because we can't compete with, you know, oil and gas sector especially, and so we definitely look at other things, so pension and annual leave and flexibility, and our values and culture are really important, and they're often what attracts people in, but also retains them, and making sure you've got a great manager. Like, a lot of people leave organizations because of who manages them, so really making sure we've got great managers who are really caring and supportive, and challenging as well for people, so they're really learning. And then in terms of the subsidized university programs, yeah, that is something that we do ourselves at the moment, and we want to ensure that people do have continuous development. So we look at that, and we look at things like graduate apprenticeship. So in Scotland, people can work and do a degree at the same time, and not just those that are graduates, but people who at any stage in their career who want to do a degree but keep working, and so the government actually support that too. So that's a really good way of people developing their career. So we're seeing people, you know, doing degrees in data or engineering who are mid-career or even later in their career, because they then give them opportunities to change their future. And then in terms of the question that Antonia had, yes, we do have experience of internships. We found them really effective. We do paid internships in the summer months, and we tend to focus on university students. And we'll often have them for a couple of years, and we have a really good rate of them then going on to do our graduate programs. We found it an extremely effective way of getting people into the workplace and connected with Scottish Water, and we're seeing some of them now really motoring through the organisation in terms of their connection with Scottish Water, and also their their performance is excellent. So we do think they promote their sector, and even those people then talk about Scottish Water with other people. So you got to look at a really multi-stranded approach, I think, in terms of like, how do you promote the sector with young people? Thank you.
Thanks so much, Louise. Those are such good points. I don't know if Fiola or Florian come in. Fiola, did you want to come in?
Yeah,
okay.
Maybe I can answer the question of Antonia about the internship. Yes, it is quite useful. I used to do also internship during my bachelor studies at the utility for 6 months. It was very, very useful for me as well, but here we don't pay interns, students, and which is a very which is a not which maybe this is not a good approach in this way, but following internship is very important. And here in WBTP, but also in the regional water company of Jakova, not just in technical department, but also in other departments, students or post students, they have chance to follow internship. As per WBTP, the doors are open. We accept students from universities to have internship 1 week 1 month, 2 months, depend how they want, how long they want to follow the internship. But I think now the ministry is working on that, and with a kind of agreement with water utilities, they will try to provide at least symbolic payment for intern students.
Thanks so much, Fiola. And I think we have a question that was asked, which I think is a really interesting question. It's actually something we at the World Bank also struggle with sometimes, which is, what do you believe, who should start the initiative of getting young professionals interested in the water sector? The utilities, their association, the ministries, universities, or someone else? So since we have Florian here from university, maybe I'll turn to Florian for his point of view on this, and we can open it up. And then after that, we also have another comment from Sonia Hofbauer, which we'll go to. So over to you, Florian.
So we deal a lot with participatory approaches and education. So in my point of view, everyone in the water sector can start initiatives to inform the people, to raise awareness. So it's not the responsibility of solely the universities or the ministries or the utilities. It's we all can contribute to attract new talents, to attract students to universities, but also non-academics to work for the water utilities. So in Austria, we see a lot of initiatives from the universities, from the associations, from the water utilities themselves. So this is just from our experiences. Everyone should contribute, and even in Austria, although many different stakeholders are trying to collect or to find new talents, it's challenging, because of course there's the salary issue is one thing. Let's say the attractiveness of the sector is one other thing. So we should think of having a paradigm change, and we should all work together to highlight this paradigm change and to show the benefits in the water sector, for instance. Yeah, and the benefits in the water sector, at least in Austria, and this to maybe say one or two words about the politically instability. Of course, you will not get rich in the water sector, at least in Austria, and I'm quite sure it's quite the same in the other countries. But the good thing is you have quite a job guarantee, because dealing with a utility, dealing with a treatment plant, with a network, it's also a question of experiences. You must know the system, you must know the bottlenecks in the systems, how to deal with different issues. So this cannot be trained or learned overnight. So you need the experience stuff. And okay, the salary is not the best maybe, or you will not get rich, but at least you have your job if you want for your lifetime. And this is how it actually should be. And I'm aware that sometimes when talking, I would not say probably political instability, but when there are new elections, new mayor, new stuff. We observe this from time to time. I think this has possibly some historic reasons, but it will certainly change in the future when Western Balkan countries join the European Union. They have biannually reports to the European Commission in regards to the requirements of the, for instance, wastewater treatment directive. If those reports do not work, if the treatment plants do not perform, then this will be an issue for the municipalities, because then they have to pay fines and things like that. And maybe then this is a point where people realize, okay, we need the trained staff, we need the educated staff, and we need the experience. Otherwise, we will get some problems with the reporting. But I don't know where the reasons originally are, but I think this could be a possible solution approach. Okay, we need the trained staff, we need them continuously, because we will have excessive reporting after we join the European Union, and it's all about transparency in the new wastewater treatment directive as well.
Thank you so much, Florian. And I think, yeah, one of my reactions as well was, if you start to have incentives for performance and performance benchmarking and aligned incentives for that, it can often quite quickly shift so that it's not just about loyalty to a party, it's about performance. And by getting those incentives right is a lot of the governance reforms that we work on and others work on. We have a comment from Sonja Hofbauer, who talks about the experience is that in Austrian utilities, there's often not very motivated to work internationally. And she's designed the water operator partnership and struggled to get partners. At the same time, students in English lectures are often motivated to work internationally, but find it hard to enter, as often many years of experience are asked for. Once working in Austrian utilities, there seems to be little flexibility for gaining experience elsewhere, that it would be a really motivating factor. So I think this is this is actually a really interesting point, which is how do you, in terms of attracting young students, how do you get them to work internationally? How do you get them to have the exposure if there's a lot of experience required? And I think it comes back to one of the points you made early on, which is if you attract people to, if you do have people in the sector, what are the mechanisms that you use to ensure that they're interacting with more senior staff? Because obviously, if you have a significant proportion of your staff is going to be leaving, there's also transfer of skills, but that transfer is also both ways, right? So we referenced a little bit reverse mentorships, but I don't know if anybody else has a reaction to this or a suggestion. I don't know, Louise, maybe from your experience in working in this, you might have a reaction or suggestion on this point. I don't mean to put you on the spot, so please, others feel free to come in.
I suppose I'm thinking it's been more difficult since Brexit. We traditionally, certainly over the last 10, 20 years, we've had a lot of European engineers coming and working with us, because we do offer like fixed term contracts, and we work with a variety of different suppliers. People will apply for sort of temporary jobs with us, and that can be a great way of them getting experience. I don't think we've we've certainly had visits from other water authorities and tried to do collaborative work that way. I think as an individual, I think it's easier when you're a student in a way, because there's more of a sort of placement mentality, and it's probably a gap that it would be interesting to see whether sort of Institute of Waters or things could look at. Is there something that we could do? We're certainly looking at how could we do more sort of external secondments and things, but that would be mostly with our partners. And it's slightly more difficult now than it was previously. So yeah, I think you're showing a big need. I'm not quite sure I've got a solution to hand, but something to think about.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I think I mean, one of the other things I think that did happen during COVID is that some of the barriers to exchange sort of came down as everybody became virtual. And so, whether it's through Danube Water, whether it's through some of the other networks and associations, that's one way to get exposure to this international experience, at least at an entry level, which can perhaps stimulate discussion. I do think that with a lot of the challenges that we have with water and climate, with water circularity, the things that Florian was talking about in terms of how the sector is really evolving, and certain regions of the world, places in particular in the Mediterranean, some places actually in the US, where you have real challenges in terms of water supply. These solutions, one of the key needs is to accelerate the exchange on solutions on what you do, particularly in areas with water scarcity or depletion of groundwater. So I think that might be one of the ways to do it, is to start with virtual, start with the networks, to get a bit more interest in working internationally, because I think that this is an area where we need to be able to benefit from each other. I had, unless there are other questions from the panelists or comments from the panelists, I had sort of one quick question, which is, we talked a little bit about data and why it's so important to have a diverse workforce, and particularly in terms of the youth. It really struck me. I mean, I think in the US, something like 1/3 of all water staff are going to be retiring in the next 5 to 10 years. So you're talking about losing 1/3 of your workforce. And if that, and in a context where you have declining populations, this is a huge crisis. What's going to happen? And so I'm curious to know, this is, I guess, for Fiola and for Louise, do you have those statistics? Do you track those statistics on what percentage of your workforce is going to be retiring? And maybe it's something where just getting that data would be quite useful. And I think maybe a brief response, and then we will start to wrap up and close.
So Sarah, yeah, we've been probably doing more proactive work on this for the past 10 years. So have been, and that has led to us having many more modern apprenticeships. So really investing in youth pipelines much more over the last 10 years. And we do like programs where people take flexible retirement. So they'll actually reduce, they'll go on their pension, reduce their hours, but still working, and then working alongside someone to take over. So we've been doing a lot of programs to assist that, and that's worked really well. But yeah, like investing in that youth pipelines. I think we do need to think creatively as well about, well, what are the jobs for the future going to look like? Like how's that going to change? And what can be the impact of AI and automation on our sector? So it's not about like replacing like for like. We do need to plan for what a future water industry is going to look like, and think about the skills that we need to invest, and that's going to be different. So it's being quite creative about what that's going to be for the future. Thank you.
And yes, I also have additional comment regarding this. It's retired workforce, and also it's a big issue also in regional water in utilities here in Kosovo, and it changed very fast. I remember before 2 years when utilities opened the competition, you could see that there were 100 application, 50 application of engineers, and it changed very quickly. After 1 year, you could see that there applied only 2 engineers, and you have to close the concourse, to close the competition. It was very strange, but you cannot say it is strange because it's obvious that engineers, they are having more opportunities. They are more attracted to work in a private sector because they have a higher salaries, and majority is going abroad. So this is a very serious issue which we have to work on as a utilities. And then I think the government have to work also on this. I don't know if it's, of course, salaries are the main reason, but also maybe to make kind of balance, to prioritize engineers, to prioritize educated staff and experienced staff. I don't know, to make kind of a balance and prioritizing in order to attract them to stay in the sector, in the utility and in the sector, and also to attract the others to apply. So I think it's quite serious also in Kosovo.
Thank you so much, Fiola. And Florian, have you had any last reaction very quickly, and then we will close and thank everybody.
Well, basically, I agree on what Louise said. So digitalization will be an important thing to be considered when thinking of, let's say, the challenges of the upcoming periods. But this will certainly help on the one hand, or it will change our work, but it might also help to attract new talents, because the new generation, they grew up all with their smartphones and with everything. So I see it in my lectures when we talk about artificial intelligence, about drone inspection and things like that, they get big eyes. So this digitalization transition might also help to attract new talented stuff.
Fantastic. I want to thank our panelists and our participants, and of course Katie Schilling from Danube Water Partnerships for organizing and leading this whole seminar. We have a link in the chat that we're looking forward to seeing at the next edition of the KnowNow webinar, so stay tuned. So please check out the link from Katie Schilling, and I just want to say I've learned quite a lot from all of you, and really look forward to seeing how we address these challenges. And you've given me a lot of inspiration. I don't know, there was a hand raised. Was that a hand raise or a high five? So a high five back to everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Looking forward to the next steps. And thank you, Katie.